Fantastic. So, anybody want to do a recap of last?
Let's take the book.
But more importantly, can you read Dave's writing?
We'll give it a go.
Can't drink my coffee that way.
I keep dipping my microphone in my drink.
Yeah. Had to learn to hold it on the opposite side.
Okay, so the points go as follows. An uncomfortably long embrace.
Yep.
Caliban is wearing a silver zero suit. Also, it's like wearing what Samus wears. Caliban has questions. Felt safe and secure. Caliban feels like she has been regurgitated back into the world. Caliban and Eliana have gone to bed.
For several days.
Rumours about the weather. Triumvirate is mentioned several times. May have to go back to the tower that was made
Reconstructed as part of the...
made after Astraeos blew up the district. Horrible rain. Strange woman gets on the train with this. Woman is strange. Train is going slowly. She wants to find somewhere and she's lost. We end up going to the restaurant place.
At the top of the tower, wasn't it?
Yeah, and the restaurant is basically Dingles, is what he's put here. It's very posh, but cramped also. There's a big flash and a crash. And it's got girl on mouthpiece or something. She recognises Hawk and Hawk vice versa. So yeah, she ends up being a mirror of me from the shadow. And he's put Kelly has a conversation with herself. The end.
Well, Ross and I did a development mode session within the week about like how Stowball would have taken all this, because I was just be like, I don't think Eliane had been like, if Eliane had been back for a couple of days, I don't think he'd have just gone, oh, you're back, okay, great, let's move on. No. So he kind of had a bit of a heart-to-heart conversation with her. Does Ross told you all this?
No.
No.
Oh, you're saying yeah. I thought you'd like understand.
Oh no, just
okay, that's fine. So he had a bit of a heart-to-heart with her, and he was just like, what happened there? And she's like, oh, I don't really know, and being a bit wishy-washy about it. But of course, he's got all these like Borno vision and can read people and all that stuff. And I think it was something along the lines of, she knows she's changed. She doesn't know exactly how.
Yeah.
She feels there might be a purpose for her change, but she doesn't feel that purpose has come yet. So there's not like it's lying in wait for something. But she thinks she's more powerful than she was before. And she's kind of looking off wistfully. He's like, well, what do you want power for? What could you possibly want and do? And when he's like saying what you want, she's looking off over to the bar where there's like a pinboard of all like pictures of memories and good times and all that jazz. And she looks over and there's like one of her and Caliban just like hugging each other and, like, yay, party time photo. And she's like, I really just want Caliban back. And then like thunder cracks and the room shakes and all kinds of things, and she gets a sense that actually Caliban has now come back, and it's not like, and it was her bringing her back, it was her sucking her back out of, and she had the power to do this. And she's like, it's like a scab in her brain, and she knows she shouldn't itch it, and she knows it's there for something, and she's really trying to ignore it, but if she uses it, boom, she, loads of power.
Got no control over it whatsoever.
No. But in the same photo, there was like Caliban and her doing this, and you're in the, like, Hawk was in the background, and
Oh, okay.
and Hawk from Shadow got pulled at the same time, and that's how she ended up there.
Ooh, that's cool.
So that's how she ended up, and she didn't know where she was or what she was doing. Like Caliban
Yeah,
knew
yeah.
about all these worlds, but Hawk from that Shadow didn't know any of that stuff. So that's why all Days to Confused.
Ah, that makes sense. So, is it Caliban,
Yes.
or is it It is actually Caliban.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, that was
Ooh.
our kind of into it.
No, that's cool.
And he was like, okay, well, just she also gets the sense that it's good because he obviously knows what it feels like to be a dual personality, to have something within that he doesn't really understand, to, you know, but she's like, no, I really got the sense that Vizsla and all of this and what she's given me, and this is a gift, is for a good purpose. And he wonders whether it could be part of this whole end fight, and towards the middle of
Because she came
creation.
to us in an odd. She came to us in an odd state anyway, didn't
She did,
Because
yeah.
She's.
She wasn't quite Vizsla, she wasn't quite anything, she was
No.
lots of different things. When she wasn't quite Vizsla, so when she went off to Vizsla, we were like, will that be accepted? But I think, do you remember watching
Maybe
Buffy
she
the
thought they
Vampire
were
Slayer?
lying.
Do you remember watching Buffy the Vampire Slayer? Don't ask me what season, I don't know. But when the little sister just turned up, and all of a sudden this teenage sister had come out. No, Dawn, possibly?
Dawn, season
Dawn.
5.
Yeah.
Dawn, that's the one, yeah.
Yeah.
I know.
And basically she was a key that had just been implanted and everybody knew who she was, but she hadn't been there before, and what? Part of me wonder if Eliane is a bit like that. So she's been there since the beginning, and as part of this whole spell going backwards and forwards in time, but she is an instrumental element that needs to be there and needs to have certain power to be able to do what she needs to do at the end. So yeah, but I don't scare Eliane with all that lot, but that's just kind of going on Snowball's head.
No, that makes a lot of sense, actually. Yeah. So, yeah, Ross and I were having the conversation about potentially like changing some of the stuff with Hawk, and it's kind of, it's like, I love Hawk who she is, but I don't really know who she is, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I've kind of been struggling.
I think what you've got the.
I can't remember what the hell I originally came up
Yeah.
with, if that makes sense.
You've got the opportunity to say, right, Hawk who she is stays the same, but Hawk, the direction that she's going, gets to be changed.
What she's aiming for.
Exactly. Because you said already to your past self that it gets better, which is going to put a more positive spin on her life, which means I think that you're crossing over and returning to the actuality may possibly shift from being a self-inflicted, like a suicide attempt, and it may switch to being something else, possibly also related to your kind of chemical-based activities, but not out of desperation.
Yeah, just an accident.
Yeah.
Because I was kind of
or
thinking,
experimentation,
no. But I think it's not necessarily. I think, as I was saying, I still like to have been like a medical surgeon or something in Shadow. So, I was
a healer
as such, because I found in my note at the beginning of the notebook I've got written apothecary, and I never really kind of. And a lot of my things are like being like a holistic scientist. They're kind of not an actual. I know, because that's it. Everything that is, because one of Dave's random YouTube channels he watches is like, they say what was it, like all herbal scientists, all herbal medicines are just like not been tested yet, if that makes sense. That work.
It's
so all medicine is.
One of Tim Minchin's lines. What do you call alternative medicine that's proved to work?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Medicine.
So I think that's kind of, I think in Shadow, that's kind of what I was, is that I was like a doctor, scientist that would take those random things and see if we could turn them into actual medicine that worked. Like, so, current times, etc. Going out there and trying to find, but it was maybe one of those things that didn't work out right because I tested it on myself.
I saw something recently that certain groups are trying to bring LSD into medical science again, because they think that that's the only way they can truly expand their minds to get the answers they need to fight things like COVID-19, and which is amazing and awful.
Yeah, because like your brain works at a different level, and some of the things you can think about and you just don't tap into on an everyday basis. It's kind of, I kind of understand that a little bit.
Or possibly you had been microdosing with, LSD and X, Y, and Z other substances.
Yeah.
And then just the right combination of the right 11 secret herbs and spices effectively clued you in, and then you realised and you saw this other level of reality, and instead of writing off as a drug trip, you actually realised it and you saw it and you recognised it as actually being, well, hang on, that's the real world. What I'm in at the moment is the fake world.
Yeah.
I reckon personally you could run it either of two ways. Either that positive way and hey, I got out because of positive experimentation, or you could make it even darker, and the fact that she's going back saying yes, it gets better, and then her life seems to slip into darkness because it was okay at the time she left, but actually it seems to go into the dark bits that you experienced that led you to the suicide attempt. She's like, actually, I've let down myself, and I've let down the future me, and I've, made it so much worse that actually could come out even darker. So you could like have different drivers in that, because
because the other thing is that some kind of having something to focus on. Now we're back in the actuality. Is that as a maker, like being able to kind of do the same thing, but in where are we? Wherever we are, I can't remember what the
Saturnine.
Saturnine. But I don't want to be focusing on trying to here. I think I literally was just a local apothecary. I was nothing special. And as a maker, just as the local medicine person, really. But here, there was toying with the idea of having family that maybe got taken into Shadow at the same time, but I don't know where they went and whether they've come back or not. And trying to have more of a focus on trying to find that, if that makes sense. I don't know if it's a little. I was kind of more happy and stable in the actuality, but when I went into Shadow, it was on my own, but didn't realise that. If that makes sense.
And something was always off with you because of that, and this is why you were doing all this experimentation. You're like trying to fill that gap, fill that hole, because not being a drug user myself, I've heard that a lot of people say that they're trying to fill something that's missing with that, and actually you were missing your family and you were trying to fill it, and then actually you got to see again the actuality and realize that was the place when you had family, that was where you need to be. and actually you'd forgotten during this time, but kind of
Yeah.
having that bond with yourself,
Yeah,
realized
yeah.
that you had a bond with other people. Actually, you had a sister, maybe that might be interesting. A sister
Yeah.
that you're looking for.
Yeah, it wasn't just me here. There was like, it's like, and in because there was, I still like the idea of being involved in the medical side of things
Yep.
during the war. Kind of, say not with Aberon because he's only just recent, but Zarniroop and that lot when we were doing like the medical stuff, kind of making the tinctures for the guys out on the for the soldiers and stuff. That I still like that concept and that idea. So I think, yeah, maybe it wasn't. I'm going to stick with it wasn't a suicide, but I was a holistic scientist, so looking at the alternative medicines to be able to as other alternatives in. That's what I did in Shadow. But it was that actual moment where I got that balance.
Because we can remember pre-war, can't we?
Yeah.
We just can't remember during the war.
Yeah.
And I think because like wars don't often just kind of go, right, we're at war, now we're at not war. I mean, there's a start date and an end date normally, but pre the start, there's still warlike features that happen, and it's a wind up to war normally.
Yeah.
And I think maybe during that wind up to war, people, Vizsla, were possibly disappearing.
Yeah.
And you didn't know why, and it just happened, and it didn't happen loads, but you knew it was happening. There was enough that people were kind of going, you'd see mothers running around going, I can't find my child, or have you seen my best friend? They always meet up with me and they never have, and all this kind of thing. And your sister disappeared.
Yeah.
And during the war, you were trying to do things to help the side so you can get her back.
Yeah, we were a tag team. We did everything together, kind of thing.
Was she a twin?
Like, no, I think that's a bit crazy, but very close. But yeah, maybe like we owned not necessarily what was above Penn and Teller's, but something similar. We had that before the war. And then, like I say, she disappeared one day. But like you said, did she just say maybe she was prone to going away on her own for a little while as a search to go find herbs or whatever it was, but she didn't come back. And then, yeah, like you say, that kind of thing. So yeah, I think that gives me more of a focus to try and find something, and then kind of also because there is the thing that I have to do with what's his face that I've been asked to do with a certain maker that involves whatever it was. I can't remember off the top of my head. So yeah, it kind of gives me something more to focus on, I think. And more of a defined background.
And there's a proper arc for that, isn't there, Russ?
There is rescue, which is someone or something of great importance has been taken and you want to get them back.
Yeah.
Uncover a secret, maybe, but you've come to this awareness and you're knowing about her. I think rescue is the defeat a foe on establishment, creation, build, birth, avenge, assist. Yeah, rescue.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think you'd actually taken many steps on your make a discovery arc. Okay, so if you just want to kind of scratch that one out and put it on the new one, I will send you a message with all of the details of the new arc. And I think looking at it, the rescue, it's quite focused on somebody having actively taken the person in question. I'll send that one to you direct as well, just so it doesn't get lost in the mix. But it doesn't necessarily mean that that's what's happened.
Kind of like Stowbold with
Eliana.
Eliana in that respect.
Yeah.
But
although Stowbold's arc was repay a debt, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, because it was more I had the bond with her family than her.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I had I had a new discovery and discover a secret. So I had seeking to uncover who I was.
Yeah.
And a new discovery was I just was struggling to see how it would fit in with what we were up to, and it was just so specific that it got lost along the way, and so, which is cool. I don't mind that, it happens.
And here's something. The sister that you're looking for is your younger sister, and one of the reasons why you are reminded of it is because everybody always used to say that she looked like you did at her age.
Yeah.
So when you see this younger version of yourself, it's familiar because you've had this younger version of yourself that you've kind of interacted with before.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that was my sister. Wait, what? I've got a sister?
Yeah.
And then it all kind of comes flooding back in.
Yeah.
The big question, however, kind of snapping back into play, how do you get her back? Or rather, how do you get the younger version of yourself back?
Not back to Shadow, but back to actuality. Because she needs to go back to Shadow, because not the right timeline, is it? So yeah, I think
I think you were
going to do something last week. I can't remember.
You were going to go and see if you could speak to somebody in the Handasa.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's what we should do. And yeah, because I think if she's like only like 5 or 6 years younger than me, nothing crazy, but yeah, I like that plan. That plan works.
Cool.
But yeah, I think that's kind of it's woken that up, because I had my head messed around with at the very beginning of everything anyway, didn't I? With like where I ended up having to have that hat thing. And maybe something having coming back through from Shadow, part of like Stowbold got introduced, or you got those people took you and brought you back into the actuality with your double personality, but made sure those maybe I got taken away and they tried to cover up previous stuff. I don't know. Maybe there was I don't know. Maybe there was they covered up my actual memories of before being in Shadow, because there was my sister, but maybe we had discovered something, or we knew something that we shouldn't know. I don't know.
Okay, I know where you're coming from. Yeah.
Yeah, as a way to like have covered up for the things, to kind of retcon stuff, that it was all an inside job to cover up what we knew, what happened before or something. Yeah.
Brilliant.
I don't follow that at all.
That's all right. I do, and I'm writing it down.
You explain it to me.
Yeah. So a lot of people who went into Shadow
Yeah.
Or most Visley that went into shadow did so specifically to hide from the enemy during the
Yeah.
war. Okay. Hawk's sister disappeared into shadow before the war kind of really broke out.
Well, I thought you said she just disappeared. We don't know where
Yeah,
she would
well,
disappeared to.
she disappeared.
Okay.
Dots.
Yeah.
Into shadow.
Right.
Before the war broke out.
Okay.
And what Kelly is suggesting is that it wasn't an accidental disappearing into shadow, because the powers that be, or somebody had realized that the pair of them had discovered something, and they kind of had their memories wiped and then dumped back into shadow, just to kind of get rid of them, because they knew this secret that couldn't. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Mm.
What that is, I don't know. But
I wonder though, as well, then adding into that, because your younger self came through, and then all this weather started happening, and then there was this rumours about the triumvirate. I wonder if they knew the action, like maybe they had tags on you guys, and when you came back from shadow, that it started alarm bells ringing or something, but for some reason it didn't work with you, but it's worked with you this time when she's come back, when the younger version of you's come back, and all these triumvirate alarm bells are starting ringing, and the weather's gone a bit whir. And so
yeah, possibly. That's kind of cool.
in very kind of soon time, there's going to be a load of stone face.
It's going to go down.
Exactly.
May as well put it, yeah. Oops.
Cool.
So I
But
think
yeah,
speed's kind of the essence.
I feel that fits in more with everything that's going on. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And it fits in with Roland's crazy stuff and your crazy stuff. Yeah, I like that a lot more, actually. So. Yay!
Cool. Yay!
Okay, so the Stobold, Hawk Junior, and Roland, 4 of you,
Junior.
kind of head off towards the Hendasa, because you've got a contact there, haven't you, Stobold?
Yep.
Yeah. And they're kind of open, 28 hours a day, because it's just the nature of the way that they do things. And you go to get on the tram, and it's quite obvious that the weather is lessening, and that the rain has eased off quite significantly in the time that you've been up in the restaurant, discussing these things. And I think,
reckon we get on the tram, and then as it's kind of pulling away, we see some of those horses heading to the building that we've come away from.
mm-hmm.
And
because I knew that I didn't like them. Every time I saw them,
they don't like you, lovely.
Just because they's Popo.
Like me. Popo. See, I sent that in a message to Dave the other day saying, like something in regards to the Popo. And he's like, where the hell have you gotten that from? I'm like, no, but I do. That's me.
We've just been reading the first hippopotamus on the Rune by David Williams, and they call it a hippopo rocket and a hippopo spacesuit, and I'm like, why are they calling it hippopo? Like, why not a hippo space rocket or hippo? Anyway, carry on.
And Roland's kind of looking at the back of the carriage, and the train, I think this time is going to be go for like one of those kind of classic 50s Americana style, the engine's real sleek brushed silver, and it's got the lines down the side of it, and it's probably got like bubble observation lounges at the top where you can kind of stick your head into it, like
Like the
Monorail,
meerkat
monorail,
pit.
monorail, monorail.
It looks like the meerkat pit at the zoo.
Yes.
And Roland's kind of sat at the back of one of these ones, and you can see that he's desperately trying to suppress a grin on his face as he's kind of looking around on these. And he said, he pops back out of his dome and he says, I think we'd possibly best split off. I'm going to go and lay out some false tracks, because if those stone faces are onto you, and he kind of looks at Hawk, and Hawk says,
Junior.
I've got I think I've got some way that I can throw them off the scent. And I don't know if he's going to do a dramatic open the back door of the train and then kind of dive off.
Billowy cape thing. Yeah.
Yes, he kind of
Billowy, because he's got a bitchin' billowy coat. He
Yeah.
has to.
He just kind of does, like, just standing there and just kind of jumps backward, Matrix style.
yes. And he kind of pulls one gun out and he says, I'll meet you back at the Rose. Why has he turned into Jason Statham?
Because you can't see it any other way now. Have you watched Spy?
Yeah, I think I have. I don't know.
It's on Netflix. If you haven't, it's wonderful. And Jason Statham is just like this awful agent, and he's just like, I fell off a bridge, and the car, and we were on fire, not the car. I was on fire.
You haven't seen the love of your life jump out of an aeroplane with no parachute, only to be hit halfway down by another aeroplane.
Yeah.
And then we saw him in a serious action thing the next night, and we're like,
Yeah, you can't do it.
Yeah, so he kind of matrixes off the back of the thing, and he's kind of, you see him. Is he that cool? Is he going to do a superhero landing? Yeah, he probably will do. Yes. So he kind of does a superhero landing down on one knee, but with his one gun just up in the air, and then he runs off into the night.
So it's mid-afternoon. It's night time?
I don't know. I know it was quite dark because. Oh, you got to the pub and it was about sort of. I thought it was quite late when you got back to the Rose with.
Maybe it's dinner time.
Endless Woods. Went back to the Rose. Hot Love. Yeah, Stowball came back to the Rose with a load of coffees from Beano's. Then you went to the Museum of You. That was only a couple of hours.
Yeah.
That was a couple of hours. Then you went to Penn and Teller's and all the demons were gone. Then you got the suit. Yeah. So it was kind of.
So it's like 8-9 o'clock now.
It's early evening, yeah. And the train takes you back to the district where the transformation again, the alchemist.
Did you shuffle them?
I did. Obviously not well enough, because there's the angel next to the alchemist, because those are two that we pulled the other night.
Yeah.
I'm going to reshuffle. Should I redraw that one?
Yeah.
Yeah, can do.
Because that isn't the most ominous card for the Hendasa. I have the Watcher. So the Watcher. The Watcher card indicates that one must pay close attention. Often the next card turn suggests exactly what they should pay attention to, but at other times it's more general guidance. Stay alert. The Watcher presages the involvement of a parent or parental figure, particularly in a context of imparting wisdom or knowledge. It's often considered a positive card for this reason. Game narrative: a parent becomes a prominent figure, a watch person catches a criminal in the act, something amazing is seen, secret knowledge is the key to a significant problem or challenge.
Not magic.
No, and the alt text
Getting
on
it, I'm getting it.
yeah, and the alt and the alt text on the card is: the movements of the stars are the thoughts of God-given motion. Definitely not magic.
That's a
Make
prop
my
I've
own,
used
yeah.
most. Like, I use that more than my dice, I think, in this game. Okay, so we head off to the
Yes.
Handessa.
Yeah.
So see if Agent 64's around.
Yeah. What family are you?
I don't know.
So we're not going straight back to the roads. We're heading to the Hendessa
Yeah.
headquarters.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, I think timing's of the essence, because if
Yeah.
the stony faces are after us, I don't know, mysteries maybe?
Mysteries. Yeah. So if you've got the little triple foil symbol,
Do you know what triple four symbol
but it
is?
should
No,
say
yeah.
mysteries, rats, mirrors, and stone.
So it's deck mysteries.
Yes.
Mirrors,
So this is
rats.
this is your house.
Yeah.
So basically, and it's the sovereign as well. Sovereign of mysteries. So you get +2 on any rolls that you make,
Whoop.
and
So
everybody else.
Agent 64 is there.
Yeah, of course he is. Can I try and do his accent? No, I'm not going to try and do. I'm not going to try and do his accent because that will just come out really bad. How do you tell?
Jason Statham sounded Cornish in my mind, so there we go. How do I tell what?
How do you tell all these agents apart? Because they all look like Hugo Weaving as Mr. Smith.
It's like sheep. So when it's cursory glances, you can't tell them apart. But like with twins, if you look really hard or you know them well enough, there are differences that make it obvious. So like the way he walks is totally a bit different than Agent 63.
Okay.
So.
And his haircut is just like 1/10 of a millimeter shorter, but you can tell. You can totally tell.
His cowlick's just a bit.
Yeah. Got more of a jaunty curl to it.
It's positively jaunty, like you say, but the other one is a little bit more serious of a cowlick. And
he uses gel.
One uses fructis gel, the other one uses bedhead.
Yeah.
Of course, I'm a connoisseur of hair gels.
I'm quite surprised you knew.
Font of useless information.
Have been with women who have lots of hair things.
Dave still wouldn't know, bless him. He just knows I have potions and lotions in the bathroom. That's pretty much.
I think Ross only knows because he's like, that smells nice. I'm like, it's fructis.
Oh, yeah.
Mr. Stobold, he says, what brings you here on such an unseasonably blustery evening?
We need some help.
As is pretty much always the case. Please, would you and your colleagues come in?
Now, I think Agent 64 is a bit renegade. Because the Handassa is kind of a government type organization.
Yes and no. They kind of work for the Invisible Church more than they work for the Deathless Triumvirate.
Okay. I think the Deathless Triumvirate tried to enforce certain rules and like record keeping and things like this, and also say these records should be expunged. And I think my friend here doesn't always expunge when he should, and probably has a secret stash or two and different things. So I think he doesn't like toe the line and doesn't necessarily agree with everything that Triumvirate do. So kind of explain to him that we've got a problem with Triumvirate. We think they're hot on our heels. We don't want to get you into any trouble, but this girl, pointing to Hawk Jr., is this girl. and they both exist here when
Wonder
this
Twin
one.
powers activate. No, hang on. Cal, you do that.
You see, Kelly's above Ross in my screen, so those probably just.
So, yeah. Either or.
Yeah. So, she needs to go back to Shadow, but we think the Triumvirate are after her now, and we think there's a reason why the Triumvirate are after Hawk as well. That has something to do with her memories that got left behind when she went into Shadow. So first, can we get Hawk
They're
Jr.
after
back
us,
into
but-
Shadow? Second, we may come and chat to you later on or whatever about Hawk.
Yeah, I remember my what was she called? I'm Adriana.
Was I'm thinking Lady Hawk, but the black dog was called Ross. You meant
I
to know
don't know.
this. Yes, you do.
I've only seen Lady Hawk once.
What? And you should know it word for word then, because you've got crazy memories.
Yeah.
Yes.
What you on about? The Rutger Hauer's
My
character's
sister-
name.
I'm
Yeah.
My name's Adrian. She.
Oh, Hawk's your surname, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, yeah, my sister. I now remember that before Shadow, I worked together with my sister Josephine. That's all I,
Josephine, yeah?
Joseph.
You say Josephine.
Kelly?
Kelly.
Kelly?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
Kelly? 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 I love you.
Yeah. My reception's a bit crap at this end, and I'm like, are you all right? This thing's gone wrong.
So he.
Love you too.
I love both of you. You're both awesome.
Hopefully in different ways, darling.
Very different
Husband
ways.
of
Very
mine.
different ways. Very different ways. So 64 kind of looks at you, and he's. Once again, Mr. Stovald, you present a fascinating diversion from the norm of our operations.
My pleasure.
Do not worry about the agents of the Triumvirate. We have, admittedly, a sometimes tense arrangement with them, but our offices here, especially our offices here in Fartown, over and above those in the greater city of Saturnine, are considered somewhat sovereign establishments, and such, even their stone-faced agents are not permitted inside these buildings, and you can consider yourself safe in here.
Sanctuary.
When it comes to returning the young lady, and he kind of looks at the pair of the hawks, most unusual. You are well aware that our primary task is locating and getting Visley out of Shadow. Returning them is not something we normally consider as not normally something we concern ourselves with. However, it should be a relatively simple matter to replace the young lady at the right place in her life.
Great.
Because I'm here. She needs to be there, otherwise that messes up way too much stuff.
And he kind of turns to you and he kind of says, don't concern yourself too much. Time has a way of figuring itself out. There are certain things and certain fixed points in time which have to happen. the casting of certain spells at certain times, for example. But the rest of it is not as linear as one thinks.
I really just wanted you to say in that voice, it is wibbly wobbly, timey wimey.
I can't do it now. I was going to, but I didn't want to be quite so obvious.
I'm going to put wibbly wobbly, timey wimey.
I am presuming that you are wanting to get the young lady returned to her own time slot, as it were, sooner rather than later.
Yes, please.
Because we have a sense that the Triumvirate weren't aware I had returned until she had turned up. They just, as we were leaving the tower and district wherever, they were there pretty sharpish. And they've not liked me for a while for a reason. But
Was that not your association with the rogue maker known as Dennis?
there seemed something else as well, but yeah, probably. But there was something else.
I believe that it may have been a little from the first instance and a little from the second instance.
Mm-hmm.
Very well then. And he kind of, he's not actually sat down at the moment behind his desk, but you get the feeling that he's kind of pushing himself back from his desk and standing up from a slidey chair. Let us be on our way. And he kind of takes you through to, they've got a series, and you remember from when you came here when Eliana had been pulled back out of Shadow. They've got guest dormitories and quarters where they kind of temporarily house Visley, who've just come back out of Shadow and still going through shock. But you remember that they have like extraction chambers, and I kind of see them. They're halfway in between the room in the hover ships in the Matrix where they all plug in and go into the Matrix. Mm-hmm. So they'd have like an operator sat there with a bunch of scrying crystals to watch them, and then a load of chairs where they kind of project themselves partially or completely into Shadow. It's halfway between that and like a summoning circle.
I was half imagining the kind of lightning orb that Terminators come in.
Mm-hmm. Travel between the sun. I mean, traveling to Shadow is no. Oh, and he's going to give this exposition in his voice. Traveling to Shadow is no different than traveling to any of the other suns. You'd have to remember, Mr. Stobald, that he's just protecting yourself from the effects of that sun in the same way one would take certain precautions when one travels to the red. Traveling to Shadow, or to give it its correct name, traveling to the grey sun, requires precautions as well. I can't keep on doing his voice, sorry. Traveling to the grey sun requires precautions as well. By using this kind of method, one of our agents does not fully go to Shadow and is thus protected from the corrupting effects of the lie that pervades the entirety of the sun. However, I am also presuming that the two of you do not wish to travel back to Shadow with your past self.
No, okay. Thank you.
So we would need something different to this. And then I'm kind of thinking, is it... No, because we've done the whole Stargate portal analog for that sort of thing.
Did you guys see crap, what's it called? It's Dark Materials.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like the gates that the subtle knife opens. It is literally just a
rip.
A slip in time. Like, you go there and you'll end up. But maybe
That
they
could
have
be a
like,
thing because
maybe they have a subtle knife to be able to open up whatever.
the Handasa and Hendasa and Hundasa
Mm.
keeps changing its name all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But also maybe it progresses its location, because actually that much travelling between the suns makes a weak spot, and they've had to cordon off the last weak spot because it got really, really weak, and you could just walk through from one to the other and not realise it.
Because what, they're hate cysts are
Yeah.
like that, but with an intense thing that had happened for that. So yeah, I guess.
So I think there's a room somewhere where one of these slits is, just because of the frequency of going forward and back and forward and back. It had made this really weak spot within their building, kind of thing.
Yeah, that's what they're.
Brilliant. So the ambassador signifies an NPC is very smart. One or more combatants in a conflict use diplomacy over violence, and someone must use intelligence and reason to move forward. But the alt text, because this game is totally not magic, Monty Cook, you game sorcerer, the offering of a broken blade is an overture for peace.
Jesus mother.
The only card that could have been more apt, and is she holding a knife? No, she's holding like a, yeah, she's holding a sword, a broken sword. The only card that possibly would have been more adept for this moment would have been the revealing knife.
Yeah.
But I'll take that one there. So he kind of takes you through to a room that's kind of closed, and it's got like a yellow warning sign kind of stamped on it. And he reaches into his pocket and he takes out a massive ring of keys, and then he kind of opens up 2 or 3 locks, and then he casts a quick spell to open up the last lock on it. He says, "This is a room that we seldom use." And then he kind of gives exposition very similar to what Charlie said. He said it was one of the first rooms that we used here, and it was before the building grew to the size that it is now. So it is a weak spot. I believe you're aware of weak spots in between the suns.
Mm-hmm.
So we can make use of this. Mistress Hawk.
Yep.
Obviously, the pair of you kind of peek up. He said,
Do they both? Because that wasn't your name in Shadow, was it?
No, it wouldn't have been.
So she wouldn't react to it, would she?
Oh, I don't know.
I don't think so. Because we all had different names, didn't we?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know what my name was.
Right. So,
Maybe
Mistress
that
Hawk,
could be the
a step on your.
or it could be the weird thing that I still have the same name because we got our minds wiped. We didn't know who we were
Beforehand.
Yeah, that could be one of the
Mhm.
anomalies.
Yep.
With
So
us having gone to Shadow.
everybody else had a name in the
Shadow.
purple sun, indigo. What colour are we in?
Indigo.
Indigo, right? Indigo sun, and then they had a different name in Shadow.
Yeah.
But because when you went to Shadow, you had your mind wiped. You had the different name in Shadow, but you took it back with you into Indigo because you had nothing else to go back to.
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. Someone jot
Yeah.
that down because I'll
So you so you actually need to find your original name then as well, don't you? To find your sister.
No, because Mistress Adrian Hawk was my name in the actuality,
Okay.
but I took it with me to the Shadow.
Okay.
Not
Yeah.
everyone else does, like you said.
Okay.
Could have been Bob.
Okay.
Smith,
I think if it hadn't been though, you had to find your name. It's meaning. But it's a cool name and you don't want to not have that name, do you?
Whereas and thingy was what's his face, awful dude. So,
Stephen King.
but no, I just think that
What was Snowball's name in Shadow? Oh, it was John Smith, wasn't it?
Yep.
See that? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I said Bob Smith. So close enough for genericiness. But no, I think that's kind of interesting because, like you said, everybody else has that, but that makes that work. If that makes sense.
Maybe.
But that's how we
his-
know that I don't have my name, because both of us respond to it.
Yeah.
And they weren't expecting that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mistress
And-
Hawk be present.
And maybe, sorry, just a minute.
Sorry?
Maybe, so your whole mind was wiped, but did you ever see Paycheck?
No, I don't think so.
Ben Affleck.
Ben
Good
Affleck. It's a
film.
good film, actually. Yeah.
I might have. I've seen so many stuff, much stuff I don't know.
So the basic principle is that he does this piece of work, and he had agreed to have his mind wiped from it, because it was some like amazing piece of work, and he was meant to get this like crazy big paycheck, but instead he received like an envelope full of stuff, and had been told that he'd forfeited his paycheck.
Yeah.
And it turned out like he had given himself clues to find out why, and to get his memory back, and to realise what he'd done, and to stop it, basically. So when you were going into shadow, your mind was wiped, but you're like, my name is part of the clue to who I am. I need to keep this with me so I can figure it out later on, you know?
Yeah.
Don't know why or how, but it has elements within my name that mean something.
Okay. So 64 kind of looks up and he says, okay, Mistress Hawk. And then you both look up and he looks a bit confused at that. Mistress Hawk the Elder, I would require I would require your assistance in this endeavour. We need to calculate the correct moment in your timeline to send her back to. And he kind of indicates, opens up into the room. He says, don't step on the inside of the circle. And then you see there's a like a painted, you don't want to call it a summoning circle, but there's symbols on the floor and it's got various different magical things. So don't step inside it. But if you would take place in one of the stations, and then there's kind of spaces where it's quite obvious that people are supposed to stand.
Yeah.
Master Stowbold, if you would be so kind as to stand at one or the other one. I don't think there's much that you could assist in this, given the nature of your magic. However, it is always useful to have other Visley on hand, even if it's just for the power boost that you may be able to give. And then he kind of looks at the younger Hawk and he says, well, if you could just wait here, and then when we tell you, just jump into the middle of the circle. And she kind of looks, I don't know, I think she's a little bit freaked out because you've been kind of talking about what's going to happen and about forgetting people's names and that she's not necessarily real. But she's kind of been looking around in wonder, the same wonder that you remember from when you came back to the actuality the first time. And I think yourself, Hawk, looking back on your younger self with that sense of optimism and joy on her face, I think that's going to reflect on you. So you can take a point of joy as well.
Yeah,
it's really warm in here.
I almost want
it's really cold in here.
When she goes back, she wakes up from a dream. That's how she'll
remember it.
Okay. But was it real?
Will she remember it at all, though? Don't they kind of, because we didn't remember the actuality when we went to Shadow. I think if she remembers anything, it will be fuzzy and...
Yeah, but do you know what? When you wake up from a dream where you know you've had a dream and it was pretty, like, intense, but you can't quite picture it all. Kind of like that.
That's almost every night at the moment, to be fair. I'm having crazy-ass dreams every single night.
No, there's been like...
Scientific research into it's happening.
Yeah. Because everyone, so you're not alone on that one.
No.
A lot of people have been saying, my dreams are mental. Yeah.
So
I dreamt I had a gap in my front teeth yesterday.
Well, I mean you're coming into money, apparently. If you dream about teeth, it's meant to mean you're
Well, 'cause
coming
I've
into money.
got my wisdom tooth's coming through, so
Isabel's
about
got a little
removing-
molar coming through, bless her.
pain.
Oh no, she's. I think it's a natural development for children, because she's still got loads of space in her mouth for teeth to come. So
Yeah. Whereas I haven't, and it's impacting on. It's the only one that's not come through, but it's impacting on all of the ones down this side on the bottom.
I've got
And
that
I've
bit.
got a twisted tooth anyway, and it's kind of pushing on that, and it's just like
Nasty.
see why babies get grumpy.
Yes.
So if you could give me a challenge level 7 check.
Both of us?
No, just Hawk. If you've
in-
got any, it's going to be intellect based, and if you've got any skills to do with memories or remembering things.
No, I'll use 1 point of intellect.
And don't forget, you can spend hidden knowledge if you've got any. So intellect will bring it down to 6.
I don't have any hidden knowledge left after spending it on. Yes, I do. I've got 8, so if I use 1 there.
And you can spend sorted to give you the extra dice should you so desire.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Oh, and during this, because I'm imagining that this room is quite dusty, but it's got like strip lights across the top of it. And Stobold realizes, as you step into the room and stand on this station, that you've got 2 shadows.
I do.
Not because of 2 lights.
Nope.
My quirk is, I don't know if we remember, my quirk is that in my reflections and photos, my eyes blink half a second out sync.
That's freaky. Because like I said, we did this development mode the other day.
Yeah.
And it was something about a mirror, an untrustworthy mirror or something.
Yeah.
I couldn't even look at the card. It freaked me out.
Oh, really?
It was like Mary Poppins with the whole mirror thing, but really quite a dark reflection. I'm like, nope, because I will have to turn every mirror in the house round. Okay. Is it a bit like a Peter Pan shadow?
No, they're both doing the same thing, just at different angles.
Okay. Okay, so I just noticed
So I
it
have
then.
2 shadows.
No,
We all have 2, just me.
just Stobold.
Just Stobold has. He has.
And they're very definitely just shadows.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
You realised that you had a flux when you were travelling to the library when you made those withstand checks against the lightning bolts.
No, but okay.
Yeah, you rolled 2 zeros on magic dice.
Okay.
I had.
Oh
the
yes,
Uber
no, I did.
flux.
Yeah.
I had the Uber flux that caused this, and you had.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've gained a shadow.
Yeah.
I got 9 and 6.
9 and 6, absolutely fantastic. So you kind of remember exactly when you bought the outfit that Hawk the Younger is wearing. And it looks like it's kind of really, really new. So you can kind of, you possibly can't tell what day of the week it was, but you can tell pretty much exactly when it was. And then you can kind of feel the 64 kind of opening up this rift and then reaching in and almost grasping this memory that you've brought to the front of your head.
Yeah.
And the knowledge of this date. and it's almost like you can feel him dragging and dropping it. Almost, you know, when Dumbledore's taking the memories out of his head and put them in the pensieve to replay them.
Yeah.
So he kind of reaches out and he grasps over the front of your head, and you can see this kind of cloudy wisp of ethereal energy or something, and he kind of flicks it into this tear or into the middle of the circle, and you see it hit like a two-dimensional tear in space, and then it opens it up, and he signals to Hawk the Younger, and she kind of looks at you, and she will say, okay, and she kind of says, I'm glad that I'm going to become you. And then
I just smile at her.
Yeah.
Like a yeah.
Ditto.
Yeah.
And she jumps through, and then all of the changes kind of in your timeline, you can feel them. So, you know, in films where you've got somebody kind of standing at the end of a long corridor and the lights go out one by one. If you imagine that in reverse, and all of these lights are kind of coming on back through your memories bit by bit towards you, and then when the most recent one hits you, you're kind of blam, knocked off your feet.
Yeah.
And I think because the next card that I've pulled is the Imprisoning Ice, you hit your head and black out temporarily.
Yeah.
Imprisoning Ice. A conflict looms with powerful forces on both sides. Someone builds a new prison, someone falls into a trap. Yeah, I think I'm going to settle just temporarily with you falling unconscious. What are you doing now? Obviously, it's you. You'll wake up a short time later on one of the beds in one of the recovery rooms that the Handassa have got. Stowbold, what do you do with the agents in the meantime?
So she's just basically collapsed on the floor.
Yeah.
And Little Hawk's gone through the.
Gone back.
Yep.
And all the magic has dissipated, and
Yep.
so I just kind of turned to him and say thank you so much, and he probably indicates that we should both take an arm over each of our shoulders and drag her to.
Do the headless triumvirate, or whatever they're called,
Deathless triumvirate.
Deathless triumvirate. Do they feel I'm not there anymore, or are they in kind of?
I think
the Handassa's shielded.
The building itself.
There's all sorts of magic going here, there, and everywhere, and I think it's probably got a level of shielding around it that they didn't know what was going on inside. They may have followed us to that building, but they're not allowed in it, and they don't know what's going on inside it.
Yeah, it's like, so when I, as Hawk, leave, are they aware that? Are they like blissfully like, oh, it must have been like a blank or whatever, or they know? Because like you were saying previously, they weren't aware that, like we said, they had like trackers in with us or whatever it was. It wasn't until Little Hawk came through that
I kind of imagined it as a tracker going off, crossing a threshold. So when it crossed in, that's when the tracker went off.
Yeah.
It's not a tracker on you and your movements. It's just a tracker on crossing that threshold.
Yeah.
And they almost probably saw the tracker go off again because she went back. You know.
Yeah.
So
the blip on the radar kind of disappears.
yeah. So I think you're okay for a little while at least.
Yeah, because they haven't been smart enough to figure out that I am that blip, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool. Just because.
Okay. So Stobold and Agent 64, I don't know if you spent much time, because he's in your Weaver cell, isn't he?
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know if you've spent much time kind of with your other cellmates. He's
I've spent quite a lot with him because remember I did that
yes,
that
helping
service.
the new
Helping the new Weavers who were coming out of Shadow.
Mhm.
And so I worked quite closely with him. We had like quite a lot of breaks together and stuff like that.
Okay. So you've probably got another one of the imprisoning ice. You've got a game of Spider's Web that you were kind of part way through.
Yeah.
And I think that you'd reached kind of like an impasse or a deadlock and you couldn't work out. It was your move and you didn't know where to go.
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of sit back.
What's that?
The Whispering Lover. It's improving grey magic, reducing indigo magic, and is generally a positive card, if I recall correctly. Always suggests a bond in place or one that will form very soon, but it can be a positive one or a negative one. Depending on other cards played, this might suggest that the relationship in question remains strong, ends, faces a challenge, and so on. The card turn essentially just brings the relationship into play.
Okay, so I have this relationship with him.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe, because Spiderweb, the way Spiderweb's played isn't very clear, is it? It's just a game.
It's like playing table chess. It's a non-Euclidean game. Only Weavers can play it properly.
Non-Euclidean.
Non-Euclidean.
What does that mean?
As in the rule. It's like playing Flux. So if you imagine,